Well, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us on Fox 9 and Fox Local. I'm Randy Meyer. We're joining the next phase of laying these two police officers to rest here in Minnesota on a route from the ME's office in Minnetonka to Jordan.
You're watching the beginning of this procession now from the medical examiner's office in Minnetonka for the two Burnsville police officers who were killed on Sunday, Officer Paul Elmstrand and Officer Matthew Ruge. The paramedic, Adam Finseth, was taken to the funeral home in Jordan yesterday. So again, this procession is just beginning. They will make their way from Minnetonka on 62nd Street there to 494 down 169 to Jordan, and we will carry this procession in its entirety.
This is the phase where officers from all over the Twin Cities, primarily in the metro here, on this day will honor those two officers in the next phase, the next stage of them being laid to rest. Again, this route takes them 25 to 30 miles from Minnetonka down to Jordan. And so this is a procession that will probably take around 45 minutes. Again, those two hearses that you saw carrying the bodies, Paul Elmstrand and Matthew Ruge, en route to Jordan.
At the very least 45 minutes to maybe an hour because of the number of vehicles that will also be following. There were hundreds of vehicles on Sunday that followed the bodies of these officers from HCMC in Minneapolis all the way to the medical examiner's office, and it took more than an hour for that procession to end. Now, this is something that is tradition for public safety personnel to stay with the fallen officers, and they've invited the public to line the route as well. They're just asking people to please use extreme caution on all of these roadways. And we are seeing a number of people that are gathering with American flags and lining this route shoulder to shoulder to show their support and to honor these officers who lost their lives in this domestic call early Sunday morning.
What you're seeing here now is the site in Jordan where the officers will ultimately end there at the funeral home. And we will see along that routeway many first responder vehicles, both fire, police, rescue, and they will be there the whole way guiding their fellow officers, those two heroes, down to Jordan, to the funeral home there. Again, those two officers that we are honoring today and following, Paul Elmstrand, 27 years old. He joined the Burnsville Police Department in August of 2017 as a community service officer. He was promoted to officer in July of 2019, part of the department's mobile command staff, peer team, honor guard, and field training unit.
And Matthew Ruge, also just 27 years old. He joined the Burnsville Police Department in April of 2020. He was part of the department's crisis negotiation team, and he was a physical evidence officer. And Adam Finseth, the paramedic and firefighter with Burnsville Fire Department, he was taken to the funeral home yesterday, 40 years old, and he's also an Iraq War veteran. He talks about his Army service, and if you go to his LinkedIn page, he talks extensively about his Army service, and he was killed trying to help one of these fallen officers at that home on Sunday morning.
You can see the two hearses right there as the chopper there zooms in to the highway there. The route that we believe they're taking, 66th Street. 62nd Street to 494 and then down 169 straight down to Jordan there, escorted by several different departments along the way. We did witness prior to coming on the air that family, friends, and many officers had gathered at the ME's office there, the facility in Minnetonka, to say their final farewells as well. And then they all gathered into their vehicles and will be part of this processional.
And it'll be a long line. Again, it's a tradition that they escort the fallen, and so likely maybe even as many as 100 law enforcement vehicles will be part of this procession to escort them properly down to the funeral home. Family members are also part of this and have been part of this as well on Sunday when they were taken from the hospital to the medical examiner's office.
Our Paul Bloom has been, he's been exposed to these many times. They're always, they're hard to watch sometimes. Very emotional for the people involved, obviously, very emotional for those in those vehicles en route. Paul, give us some insight into how important this is, though, for law enforcement to be a part of this.
Oh, this is so vitally important, Randy. Kelsey, thanks for having me, joining you here from the newsroom. Just to give you a little perspective on where that medical examiner's office is, kind of tucked in the corner of Minnetonka, Eden Prairie now, a newer facility, and this is sort of the extension of Highway 62. They'll eventually take a right onto 494. On the ramp, and then head along 494 into the 169 corridor down to Jordan. And you will see officers from all over the Twin Cities. In fact, just driving back to the station here where we are in Eden Prairie about an hour ago, I saw some Plymouth, Minnesota, Plymouth police vehicles that will join in. I counted about 8 to 10 Burnsville firefighting ambulances, fire trucks, of course. They are mourning as a complete city, but yesterday, this is the journey Adam Finseth took down to the funeral home in Jordan. These are brothers and sisters in uniform, everyone wearing the badge, all of these emergency responders, all of these recognizing the danger that these men and women put themselves in front of day in and day out to protect this community. And you will note that from the very beginning, the remains, the bodies are never alone. From the moment of whether it was being extracted out of that house in Burnsville to the medical examiner's office for their autopsies. They are always guarded, always protected, and this is that next step. You go to the funeral home. We haven't yet seen funeral arrangements yet at this point, but that would be the next step. Whether or not we do one significantly large memorial service or 3 separate, we just don't know. That will be up to families and loved ones, and of course, 2 of these, all 3 obviously leave behind families. We know a couple of the men married with children. We learned a little bit more today about Matthew Ruge. It turns out he's from the Wabasha-Kellogg area, so down along the Mississippi River there. They are planning a candlelight vigil for Officer Ruge, 27 years old, shot in the chest and killed. He, one of the officers today, being transported down to Jordan. And then, as you mentioned, Paul Elmstrand. We've just heard so many beautiful stories. Of course, him attending University of Northwestern here in St. Paul, and his wife with some beautiful comments in the last few days, grieving, talking about he slept so others, or he stayed awake so others could sleep. He stood tall to protect others. He wore, she kind of commented about how Paul would wear the same clothes, real basic clothing, shirts, T-shirts, whatever. His wardrobe very minimal, and that was so he could spoil his wife and children. I know his child 2 years old, and then a 5-month-old baby, so a newborn in that household. And you just think about those folks today and the families that have been shattered. So it is difficult, but I know these men and women in these additional vehicles riding with these officers, they would not miss us. This is, part of, the ritual of this, and it's sad. We do see these from time to time in the cities. We certainly see them more broadly across the country of late. An industry, a profession, if you will, that has been beat up a little bit locally here over the last few years, and this is a moment for everybody to come together, and then the beautiful scenes that we'll start seeing from unfolding from high above the highways here, which the overpasses, the flags. I saw some photos yesterday as firefighter Finseth was moved. The fire trucks on the overpasses, the firefighters standing at attention up on top of their fire trucks. No doubt, over the next 30, 40 minutes, I'm sure we'll see those scenes unfold along this journey. But a very difficult, very hard day, and we'll just continue to watch it with you guys and update you here from the newsroom. Kelsey and Randy.
Paul, you've been on the street watching a number of these processions over the last few years, and when you talk to people who just come to just show their support, what is the overriding feeling that you get from the average citizen, like we see in the background there holding an American flag? Yeah,
I mean, they want to be out there. It's it's a spectacle to see the visuals of all these vehicles with flashing lights. You mentioned probably 100 plus just in this procession, and this is still coming out of the funeral home, and we've already been on the air a few minutes, so you think about all these vehicles and how many, a mile or two I'm sure this train will sort of take up, but these people are there to say thank you above all else. They want to be there. They know that them being there, the visual to other officers, to the grieving family that no doubt is close by the hearse today. They want to say thank you. They want to know that people will be there when they need to call 911. Dangerous situation, the protectors, and when the protectors are taken in such a horrific manner, it's people want to be seen, want to be heard. They want to say thank you. These are folks who made the ultimate sacrifice, and we throw around heroes a lot, but again, the circumstance of this case, as we talked about over these last few days, going into a home, a barricaded gunman, 7 children inside, that was a situation that's close proximity, that is a volatile, dangerous, potentially deadly situation. And these, men and women, they sign up to do this, and when something awful and horrible happens to them, there are a lot of people in this community who want to be there and say thank you and grieve as a community.
Paul, I know we've all talked to many law enforcement personnel in the last couple days. I know you have as well. We talk about how this impacts the public, but there are law enforcement officers, first responders all over the state that are hurting as well. It's and we talked about this a little bit on Sunday. It's the reminder that what they're doing is throwing themselves into danger every day. And this, when an incident like this, as horrific as it is, it resonates deeply with them. Absolutely,
Randy. Domestic violence calls always the most dangerous, the most volatile. With traffic stops that these officers think about, and they have to respond. They respond. They do it willingly. They train. They know at some point this type of moment could happen. And tragically for these two that are being moved today in Ruge and Elmstrand. They signed up. They wanted to be there. Paul Elmstrand. This was his. It was more than a job, a vocation. It was a sacrifice that he wanted to make, be a part of for his community, to protect and serve. But obviously, no one wants to see it end like this. But yes, law enforcement recognize that next 911 call. The guns in this community, it can, all of these men and women understand that this is a similar call that they could take at the very next moment, even during this hour-long potential procession, they could get that 911 call. So no, they certainly understand it, Randy and Kelsey.
Yeah, it really does bring it home. Thanks, Paul. Hang in there. We're going to check in with your perspective here as we make this route along. Again, just for those viewers that may be joining us either on Fox 9 or Fox Local. Again, we are following this procession from the ME's office, the 2 slain Burnsville police officers from Sunday, making the trip from the ME's office in Minnetonka down to Jordan to the funeral home.
Yeah, the bodies of Paul Elmstrand and Matthew Ruge in this procession today. We want to bring in Tacona County Sheriff Joe Lico to talk a little bit about this procession, also his department and the dangers for law enforcement. Sheriff Lico, thank you so much for joining us. And first of all, I know your department is helping the Burnsville Police Department right now, and I am wondering too if you had officers on scene there Sunday morning.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Randy and Kelsey. We did not have officers on the scene in Burnsville that morning, but we assisted once we got the news and responded to assist them in any way we can. We're currently supporting them, through providing officers along with the other police departments here within Dakota County to make sure that the calls for service in Burnsville are covered, and that includes the fire departments adjoining Burnsville as well, helping to make sure that those calls for service are handled.
Sheriff Lico, give us some perspective, because I know you have it, some perspective on how an incident like this, as we watch that procession make its way down the highway toward Jordan, how an event like this affects your everyday police officer.
It hits everybody. In our case here in Dakota County, we might be the 3rd largest county in the state population, but we're very tight. I know Chief Schwartz, throughout my 27 years of experience here working with the Sheriff's Office. She's been around just about as long, if not longer, and we're all very tight. We work closely together and even statewide, you can identify with these officers and the departments and the communities that are going through this pain because we share the same responsibilities and the dangers of the job, and we understand that ultimately some lose their lives, and we look at it as if, that could be us, that could be our partners, that could be our neighboring agency, and for all the families that have law enforcement, you understand this, and fire, you understand the dangers, and you pray to God that this day never comes, and it came for these three and their families, and their lives are forever changed, and it's extreme sorrow. We try to cope, and you're seeing some of that coping right now. At least therapy for us is to make sure that we show our support, whether that's helping cover calls for service or being a part of this procession that you're witnessing, to provide that unity and that support to our brothers that lost their lives.
And Sheriff, it's Paul Bloom in the newsroom here at Fox, and I want to thank you again for joining us. I know you and I have had a couple conversations over the last few days. Specifically, I don't want to necessarily call it uniqueness of Burnsville, but the emergency responders in that community. It's sort of a city, a proud city, as you sort of mentioned, in other places we might expect to see sheriff deputies on scene for something like that, but Burnsville is able. They're a strong force, police, fire. Could you talk about sort of that unique department? I believe the chief kind of climbed up through the ranks there. It's a very sort of proud, strong department. If you could kind of provide our viewers a little bit more insight on that Burnsville PD specifically, and their fire department, and how much this just crushes the soul of that community.
It's a very strong community, Burnsville. With their public safety, their administrative offices, the huge support from their city council, mayor, city manager, and as I mentioned, we work closely together. We have a lot of collective initiatives that we do together. They have their own SWAT team, where the rest of us, and Egan as well, Egan and Burnsville have their own SWAT teams, but they do rely on us to assist. The other police departments, along with the sheriff's office, have our own SWAT team as well. So we do assist each other on critical calls. Our drug task force is consistent of investigators, police officers from every city within Dakota County. So we work closely. We know each other. I know many Burnsville officers through my years. Some of them have retired. I know they're hurting today. It's got a long tradition of excellence there, going back to previous chiefs and administrations, and Chief Schwartz has continued that excellence with her team, and we're just extremely saddened for all of them. I saw the pain on all their faces on Sunday when I walked in there, and it's hard for everybody. We just want to be there to support them any way we can.
Sheriff Lico, this is Kelsey again. I talked to a longtime law enforcement officer on Monday just about how dangerous domestic calls can be, and he summed it up this way. A lot of times they know you're coming because a 911 call has been placed, and this was an extremely dangerous situation that they walked into on Sunday. Can you just speak to the dangers that officers do face in these domestic calls?
Yes, and that's it's been discussed before. I mean, domestic calls are one of our highest or high-risk calls. You don't know what you're walking into. You don't know what the current emotion is. Oftentimes we get there, there's already been a dispute, and the emotions are high. And I'm not projecting whatever happened in Burnsville. We'll find that out through the investigation through the BCA. But in general, with domestics, they're extremely dangerous. We don't know if there's access to weapons. You try to de-escalate, use time and distance, but sometimes when you have victims inside, you are forced and expected to act to protect that victim. In this case, the 7 children inside. They were at risk, and we had little or no choice to make sure that we were in close proximity to protect them. And when danger comes, we're not usually given a warning, right? It happens, and it happens in an instant, and you have to respond. So our officers are always on heightened alert on every traffic stop we do, every call we go to, but specifically for domestics, we have to make sure that we are walking in full awareness and understand what we could be walking into and be prepared to act if we need to.
Sheriff, I know that the relationship between the county and the city is usually a typically very tight one, and I know over the last couple of days you have heard a lot and talked a lot about Paul Elmstrand and Matthew Ruge. Can you share some insight into these two individuals as we watch this processional make its way down 169? I know that a lot has been said about both of them, but share some of your insight, having been so close to those officers and that department.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. I wish I knew these gentlemen that were so courageous and doing their job that day and willingly went into that house. I've heard stories, as all of you have. I do know when I was there on Sunday talking to their partners, they were sharing some stories about them and just the amazing men that they were, young men that they were, and how they always just had that positive attitude, and they're willing to help and do anything for anybody, and that they just lifted up everybody else around them, and they're just a joy to work with, and that it doesn't surprise me, because that's the people that are out there protecting and serving. As unique and special as these gentlemen are that lost their lives are, they do this because it is their calling. They love helping people and protecting people. And when one of them, or more in this case, go down, it makes it even a heavier loss, because they're out there trying to do the right thing. And they're just special men. We're going to remember them forever. We won't let them their memory fade.
Well said. You
mentioned they're young men. These two police officers, I want to say again, just 27 years old, really just starting their lives. And Sheriff Lico, I know this is going to be a heavy, heavy time for all law enforcement in the area, and especially in Dakota County. Can you tell me how, especially with your experience, 27 years, as you said, in the field, how do you help your officers and help them to go out there every day following this?
Yeah, we have to check in with our people, and sometimes you don't know the connections that they have or the feelings that they might be having, or things might be surfacing from previous close call incidents they've had, or maybe they know these officers and paramedic that they've had historic contact with them. You just have to check in with them and make sure they're okay, because the last thing we want to do is send people out that are not okay. And I think, in credit to our profession across first responders, when I started 27 years ago, you had to tough it out. And if you showed emotion, it was a sign of weakness. And maybe you weren't cut out for the job. That's no more. We're recognizing that the impact, the trauma that you can experience day to day throughout this job can pile up. And we have to take care of our own. Incidents like this is a very, very heavy weight to put already into your head from all the trauma you've experienced, and we have to make sure that we check in. We have peer support. I know Burnsville does. There's access to chaplains. There's access to professional support through their city. I know we have it through our county, but really we just got to check in with each other as officers and deputies, and that's in fire. That's what we're doing day to day. That's my focus right now, and that's our focus here at the Sheriff's Office and speaking for the cities in Dakota County. And I will say this, on behalf of all of our other cities here in Dakota County, our police departments, you should be so proud. You should be so proud of the leadership that you have and the people that are willing to step up and do anything for their brothers and sisters. They really came together, and they will continue to help Burnsville and that community and the fire and police department heal. I'm sorry for the unexpected emotion, but we expect that to happen with everybody through the course of the next weeks, months.
Yeah, Sheriff, we certainly understand, and give you a moment to maybe have a sip of water. And again, it's Paul Bloom in the newsroom. And again, getting back to some of our conversations over the last couple of days, I think back just a decade now, I think 10 years since Scott Patrick, the police officer, gunned it down during a traffic stop in Mendota Heights. That's a Dakota County case. So your county is not is tragically again going back 10 years, but is not new to this type of thing, is it?
No, it is not. We have a sergeant here that actually was Scott Patrick's partner in Mendota Heights, Bobby Lambert, and we have experienced that individually and collectively. Unfortunately, before, and we've been to a lot of funerals going back just a year between Wisconsin and Minnesota and North Dakota. This is not something you get used to, and this is not something we want to get used to. This is not the way it's supposed to be, and we need to take care of our first responders, because without them, our communities won't be safe, and they are willing to sacrifice. We understand that there's low staffing challenges that we have at all of our police departments, sheriff's offices, fire, dispatch, and we're trying to get through those with what we have, and they're doing an amazing job. But it is a noble profession, and we continue to answer the call, even at short staff. But we have a lot of heavy lifting to do. But this hurts, and we will together get through this as a community, and we'll be there for Burnsville.
Sheriff, on that front, because you touched on something that is really resonating throughout the country, and that is police recruitment. And I don't want to associate this tragedy with police recruitment, but there is a sense all around the country of just how dangerous this job has become. And you referenced staffing. This is an issue that pretty much every community faces today.
Absolutely, you're correct, Randy. And we are paying attention to the school enrollments and doing our best to try to recruit and get people in. But understandably, on days like today and other things that you see out there as far as the violence and that we're encountering, that may cause some pause in those that are interested in the profession. But I tell our new people when they come in, and that you may have questioned. Thank you, first of all, for answering the call to step up and serve public service. But this is the time to get in. This is the time to get in and to be a part of the change and establish that trust and connection with your communities, because they're longing for that. And each contact at a time, you can change that. So we're doing the best we can. I fully believe that the tide will turn, and we'll start getting more into this. And our best recruitment tool is our retention tool. We got to keep the people that we have and take care of them. As I mentioned, with trauma and the overall wellness with our people, to make sure that they're having long, healthy, safe careers. So that's primarily our short-term focus. But we do need to address the long-term staffing issues. It's changing, and some of the smaller police departments, as you're seeing, are having challenges with that, and they're having difficulty surviving and providing services. And we need to take a real long look at that down the road.
Sheriff Lico, thank you so much for joining us today as we follow this procession from the ME's office all the way down to a funeral home in Jordan. Your experience with nearly 30 years in law enforcement is so vital in understanding what's going on and where police work is now, and we can tell that you are very much there for your people, and certainly there for the city of Burnsville during this difficult time. And we wouldn't, the fact that you let a little bit of emotion out, we would expect that under these circumstances. And I think that's important to be able to let it out sometimes, because these are very dark days.
Yeah, we acknowledge that this is not an easy thing for you to do, or for any other police officer to do on a day like today. So we feel very grateful to have you with us today. And please, please tell others that you may run into who are in law enforcement how important they are to all of us, not just today, but really every day. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate that. And if I could leave you with one thing, people are looking to help. And there's a ton of things that people have been doing for Burnsville, bringing flowers and food and things. But the simplest thing is just to say what you just said, Randy and Kelsey, is to acknowledge the service that our people in uniform do, and that there's appreciation there. That goes a long way. Our people need to hear that. They do need to hear that they have support. I mean, and overall, there's a large amount of support for first responders. I know that, and I have to remind our people of that sometimes because they see the dark days, and that's all they see. So we have to remind them of their purpose and that they have support. So thank you for saying that. I'll make sure to pass it along.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sheriff Lico. And that image that we just had on the air while he was saying that was of people lining this processional route with American flags. And there are a number of people on this long journey from Minnetonka to Jordan who are lining the highways, the overpasses. We've seen fire trucks. There we have the people standing guard with American flags.
Veterans.
Just, shoulder to shoulder, probably in mostly silence, but just to have that presence so that as these law enforcement vehicles drive by, they see that support in every community that they drive through. And you can see, we do have a shot, I don't know if we can pull this up, but of the fire trucks, and the ladder trucks have built a bridge to have that American flag draped over the procession as they pull into Jordan as well. And we'll be able to get that in just a moment.
So our viewers, again, this has been a processional that has been going on now for about 40 minutes, began in Minnetonka. Yesterday, there was a similar one with the body of Adam Finseth, the Burnsville firefighter-paramedic. Today, we see the hearses carrying the bodies of two other fallen heroes, Paul Elmstrand and Matthew Ruge, who both were with the Burnsville Police Department, and their bodies now being transported in that journey with too many to count, really, Kelsey, the number of first responder vehicles that escorted the two hearses to Jordan. This is the entrance into Jordan you saw there, and now obviously on your screen at home you're seeing the three officers I just referenced. You
see Matthew on the left, Paul in the middle, and then Adam, the paramedic firefighter, on the right there. And the number of law enforcement vehicles, that means a lot to the families, that kind of support to show that strength of support. There are also ways the public can help these officers and their families. The city of Burnsville, on their website, they have the two places where you can go, and we have linked that to our own website at fox9.com because they're worried about some people out there collecting money in their names, but it's not really going to the right place. So non-monetary donations to support the families can be dropped off at Prince of Peace Church, and then Law Enforcement Labor Services is handling donations for the families. All of that, again, on the City of Burnsville website that we've linked to our own at fox9.com if you want to go find that.
And if there's something you would like to do at home, Governor Tim Walz ordered flags lowered starting at sunrise. It was yesterday, but you can do it today or any day in honor of the police officers and the firefighter that were killed on Sunday morning early. So there are certainly recognition and honors going on all over the state of Minnesota since Sunday, and will continue throughout the weeks and possibly months ahead. We know that today is really just one part of what will be a fairly massive memorial service in the coming days. It has not been announced yet, to my knowledge, when that might be, but it certainly will be a statewide affair when these bodies are laid to rest.
And Paul Elmstrand's wife released a statement through their church. I spoke with their pastor yesterday at Woodridge. He had met with the family, and again, at a loss of words at just how somebody so young can be lost like this. His wife Cindy saying, "Our family is heartbroken at Paul's death. He was an amazing husband, father, son, and friend to many. He loved to laugh and loved to play, and he was the most generous, loving, patient person I have ever known, with the biggest smile. He leaves behind two small children." And we also spoke to folks at Northwestern University, where he attended in St. Paul, and they also mentioned that this was a calling for him to be in law enforcement, and he helped to work security on campus too. And this was something that he felt was where he needed to be. He needed to be in law enforcement.
Do we have the picture of Paul from last summer that shows him with his wife and daughter? I know we have that in the system. If we could pull that up just to give people a sense for Paul and you're seeing 169 now, just drifting into the city of Jordan. Those multiple first responder vehicles, police, fire rescue have been escorting the two hearses into the downtown area. And here they come there around the corner right now. You can see them behind the last flashing vehicle there. Mm-hmm.
But again, this all happened Sunday morning, very early, before 2 a.m. the first call came in. And these officers from Burnsville Police and Fire answered a very distressing domestic call, as the governor put it, a family that was in trouble. And there were 7 children inside this home. And the crisis negotiation team was out there. These officers were part of that. And Matthew Ruge in particular was part of that crisis negotiation team. And after several hours, it erupted in gunfire, and these officers were killed while the paramedic, Adam Finseth, was trying to help these wounded officers.
Paul Elmstrand, 27 years old, and Matthew Ruge, also 27. People have just really focused, understandably, on how young they were, Kelsey, and being thrust into, and it's just part of the job, being thrust into a situation like this, domestic. As Officer Lico just referenced a moment ago, domestics are hard. You don't know what you're getting into. In this particular case, they knew they had children inside that home, and they knew they had to get in to protect those children, and the end result is what we're seeing here today. Really, really hard, and those are the calls that police officers fear the most. They really dread having to deal with that, but they do it anyway. Because
oftentimes the suspect, potential gunman, the person who somebody has called 911 about, because they know that the 911 call has been made, it's one of those few calls where police officers, as they enter a scene, that person already knows they're coming, and they have time. And that's what makes them so dangerous.
Paul Bloom, insight on some of this. We talked about how dangerous those types of calls are, as demonstrated over the last couple of days. Give us some insight. You've covered this type of thing for so many years now, not just here in the Twin Cities, but just in general. Give us your take on that.
Yeah, well, I want to share kind of a specific anecdote coming out of you guys talking about these officers. Again, 27 years old, the pair of them. Their remains arriving now in Jordan. Funeral, no doubt, will happen in the coming days. But we talked when we had Dakota County Sheriff Joe Lico on about Mendota Heights police officer Scott Patrick, who was killed a decade ago, and the man who eulogized him, his partner that day at that funeral, was Bobby Lambert, now a sergeant over in Dakota County. And Bobby and I are we've kept a connection through the years, and he posted a message the other day sort of about his assessment. Now, he's spent 28 years in law enforcement, so he's spent more years wearing the badge, protecting the community in uniform than these young men live their lives, dying at 27. And he worries about the younger officers that are wearing the uniform, and sort of sent this message praying that they continue to serve and protect their communities with courage and grace, that they don the badge for their fallen brothers who no longer can, knowing that they are never alone and that we share in their pain. Quote, "I am my brother's keeper." Obviously, just again, just some sentiment from a man I've come to know who lived through this in the most agonizing way, losing his partner to a traffic stop a decade ago. Again, Bobby Lambert there. But no, you are right. These domestics, you don't know what you're going into. It was a 911 call for some sort of family situation. Did they know? Do they arrive there knowing? The man has a gun, a barricaded situation, children ages 2 to 15 inside that Burnsville home, and they have to react to that situation. It unfolded over several hours. We don't know, in the coming days we'll get more details on what happened, why the gunman opened fire, what took place there. But regardless of the facts now, these lives were lost, and they're heroic. These were men who, risked their lives, were willing to do it. Obviously, you heard the sheriff, and clearly from the context of at least one of the officers was shot and killed inside the home. This was close proximity. They were right there. They had lives to protect. A woman, 7 children, 2 to 15. And this is now an opportunity, not just for Burnsville to say thank you, to pay their respects, but really a pretty good contingent from across the Twin Cities. And these processions, as we know in sort of the news, gathering situation, these are not preset days in advance. These are officers getting word during the course of the day and wanting to be there. The symbolic, train, the amount of support, the visuals that means for the community, that it means for these grieving families, so critical. But certainly you're looking at this overwhelming support now arriving in Jordan. And again, as we kind of timed out sort of the step-off procession from the ME's office, again, up in that Minnetonka-Eden Prairie triangle all the way down there, you'd have to think there was a mile or two of emergency vehicles. And then you see, those who don't join the procession park their fire trucks at attention over overpasses. And it's really a beautiful moment. And this will, this is just a small piece. Wait till the funeral and those processions that will follow the funerals, where all the cars are lit up, and then the final rides. We have a couple of days. It's very ceremonial. It's a very difficult time, and it's beautiful when the community can come together and honor these heroes you're seeing on your screen right there.
Paul, one of the difficulties of this, you mentioned the grieving families, and that's one thing, and that's obvious in a situation like this. But and I know Sheriff Joe Lico mentioned it as well, touched upon it lightly, but it's the family of all officers that fear and grieve at this time for the unknown and for the daily trauma and harm that their loved ones face. You've had to interview some of those family members in the past. There isn't a family member of any police officer out there that doesn't wake up every day and wonder and worry.
Right. No, every time they go out the door and put on the uniform and head off to work, you don't know if you're going to come home. Loved ones, spouses, children don't know, whether they'll see their mom, their dad, a sibling return home. So no, they recognize the risks they face, and this is just so in your face, so heartbreaking for this at a time when law enforcement, as we talked about with the sheriff, and we certainly understand in the community at large, it's a difficult time. Ranks are thin. A lot of these communities, I have no idea what the current staffing situation had been in Burnsville, but short staff, working long hours, extra overtime, filling holes, really difficult to recruit, open jobs. Again, let's be honest, it's a profession that's taken a black eye here in the Twin Cities in particular over these last few years, and certainly beyond. So it's a tough time. I'm sure we could have kept the sheriff on a whole lot longer to talk about the psyche of his troops. And did anybody walk into the office and tell him, Sheriff, I don't know if I can do this anymore? I have to think that there is that type of reaction out there. And now this is a touching scene.
Yeah, that's
as you
dramatic.
pull down and then when I talked about right a mile plus, you can see those emergency vehicles. This isn't, and again, I don't want to. One's more visual than the next. The funeral will be one thing, but look at this. This is middle of the day. Again, something that kind of, I don't want to say, people would have known that at some point the bodies would be moved today, but this was not a preset moment in time, something that was on the calendar for a few days. This is day of. These are people in their city vehicles wanting to be there, and look at that. Traffic's given way for that entire lane on 169 southbound coming into Jordan. That beautiful scene of those fire trucks up on top of the overpass. That's something else right there.
And that fire truck, you see the officers that are standing on top of that fire truck, and these images that we have. This is Jordan right here. The ladder trucks forming a bridge as these law enforcement vehicles will enter Jordan, and we've got the American flag flying over the roadway. And then you see the images that we've had up of the veterans with the American flags in Jordan, and then all of the people who are forming a queue there in Jordan. And we saw a Shakopee officer who is standing there, and the images are very powerful. And you're right, Paul, we just learned a few hours ago when this procession would start, so it's not like there was any advanced notice really, and this is the turnout that you have for people who want to come out and be part of this, support the family members, support these law enforcement agencies, and support Burnsville.
We should note too that one of our reporters, Karen Scullin, is on the ground in Jordan at this hour, and when the procession gets to Jordan, and when it's appropriate, we will take Karen as well with some perspective from the ground as things culminate there at the funeral home.
And they are just minutes away from entering Jordan, where these bodies will be taken to a funeral home. The bodies of Paul Elmstrand and Matthew Ruge, both Burnsville Police Department officers. The body of Adam Finseth, the 40-year-old firefighter-paramedic, his body was taken to this funeral home yesterday. It is a long journey from the medical examiner's office in Minnetonka to Jordan, with the 100+ vehicles that are following in this line today. So we expect it to still take some time, but as you can see, people are giving way to these vehicles, making room for them respectfully as they make their way down the highway.
Governor Walz issuing a proclamation in honor of each of the fallen. It reads in part, "It is with the deepest gratitude that the state of Minnesota recognizes his dedicated service and sacrifice for his fellow Minnesotans. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family, friends, and community." By his, he's talking about all three of those officers: Paul Elmstrand, 27 years old; Matthew Ruge, 27 years old; Adam Finseth, 40 years old.
And at a time like this, I think just presence is so important, because really there's no way to articulate better than just showing up. And we saw that in Burnsville on Sunday night with the candlelight vigil that the city hosted. Really, they just brought people together, and people just started praying, started singing. There was no plan for that vigil. It really was just about being there with one another, physically being there and showing your support.
As the procession makes its way, it's just outside of Jordan now, but we want to bring in Karen Scullin now. She is on the ground there with some perspective. We saw some images earlier, Karen, of there were some veterans there, others lining the streets. Give us a sense for sort of the feeling there on the ground in Jordan as we watch this procession make its way into the city.
Right, we are just moments away, I think, from that procession arriving here to downtown Jordan, to the Ballard Sunder Funeral Home. And they will be, you have the 100 or so cars that are in line that are part of that procession, and then waiting here are the veterans, as you mentioned, but we also have moms and dads and employees in the area. Children are here to show their respect. And it is a very, you asked about the mood, it's a very somber, very, very somber mood, with a lot of heavy hearts out here. Everyone's saying they truly are feeling this. They are truly just saddened. Some are up at night thinking about the families that have been impacted, not only directly of the fallen officers and the paramedic, but really the families of all law enforcement personnel. So it's been very, very difficult today. And I spoke with several people here, kind of offering their different perspective. The veterans saying, you know, he's one of us. I feel like I have to be here. They risk their lives every single day. Somebody else telling me that she used to be in law enforcement. Her father was in law enforcement. He was injured on the job. And she said she, again, felt like she had to be here. But that I had asked her, do they feel the community support? Do you feel the community support? And she said, absolutely, 100%. It's so important. But she made a point to say, not only important today, but really in the days, the weeks, the months, and even years to come, because it doesn't get easier right away. It's such a long, long healing process for the families and for law enforcement personnel. And then others saying that, you know, it just felt like a gut punch when this happened, and they were truly, truly just sad, just very, very sad, and wanted to be here to for when the two officers arrived to join the paramedic Finseth here at the funeral home. Unclear, as we've said, you know, is the funeral going to be one big funeral and all held together? It seems to indicate that, but certainly we've gotten no formal official word that in fact is the case. So right now, a lot of the streets in downtown Jordan are blocked off. We're kind of at West 1st Street East and Varner Street South, if anybody's familiar with downtown Jordan, a very kind of a small community here. But the streets around the funeral home here are kind of blocked off. We've got people lining the streets. Maybe we could pan over to some of the veterans that are, step out of the way here, kind of alongside the funeral home on the sidewalk there, waiting honoring the officers as they will arrive here just moments from now. And it looks like police from various departments are also helping to kind of man the situation here. We've got Lakeville Police along with Jordan Police as well. Got an officer down there. I think they're probably getting very close as we speak. But that's kind of the situation right now. A lot of just heavy hearts here as not only people from Jordan but surrounding areas have come here around the funeral home to just pay their respects and show some community support for these fallen men.
You are right, Karen. We're seeing from Skyfox 9 that they are very close now, and so you will start to see law enforcement, rescue vehicles, police vehicles enter the city. We're seeing them from the sky now with that fire truck bridge with the flag that is marking the entrance into Jordan.
Yeah, and the aerial picture really tells the story at this particular moment. Just how large this is, the number of people that have gathered as they make their way to this funeral home in Jordan, the slow speed at which they are going, and we saw the veterans on the ground. You can see people, if you look closely, you can see people lining the street there to
the hearses just passed right there.
Show that they are there. And that support is very much appreciated. The families will see that as they are driving by, and every law enforcement officer who's in this procession will see that as they are driving by today.
For anyone who may have just tuned in here in the late afternoon, we're broadcasting on Fox 9 and Fox Local, our streaming service. We are covering from beginning to end the procession that began in Minnetonka, carrying 2 of the 3 officers who were the first responders to that incident on Sunday morning, Paul Elmstrand and Matthew Ruge. They left the ME's office in Minnetonka, bodies being carried in 2 black hearses, but accompanied by literally hundreds of other vehicles, rescue, fire, police, obviously, down to Jordan, to the funeral home there, where they will join Adam Finseth, who received the same or similar type procession yesterday, a day ahead of them.
I talked to the State Fire Chiefs Association and asked them if there'd ever been a paramedic firefighter shot and killed in the line of duty in Minnesota, and they could not recall any other case in which a paramedic and firefighter had been shot and killed in the line of duty, and he was helping these officers who had been wounded in this attack during this domestic call. Anybody who wants to help these officers and their families, the city of Burnsville has information on their site, which we've linked to fox9.com. There are monetary donations that are being handled by the Law Enforcement Labor Services, and then non-monetary donations that are being handled at the Prince of Peace Church in Burnsville. And so let's bring in Karen Scullin, who is in Jordan right now, as she's watching this line of cars. And so, Karen, just tell us what the feeling is all around you right now.
Well, right now the procession is just coming into the downtown area, being led, what it looks like, by State Patrol. Several State Patrol cars leading this procession. Lights flashing, the blue and reds flashing all the way. It's very quiet here right now. People were talking just moments ago. It's gotten very, very quiet. As we know, the bodies of Officer Ruge and Elmstrand are now approaching the funeral home. We're in downtown Jordan. Several people that are here are from Jordan, and then some from outside communities. We can see the hearses now approaching the funeral home as well, and I can even tell you personally, this is hard. This is a tough watch here. As we kind of pause and let them arrive here to the funeral home. Kind of unclear what their connection is to Jordan, if there is any. We don't really know. I asked around a little bit, but this is where they are arriving to, the funeral home, the Ballard-St Funeral Home here in Jordan.
The two officers slain on Sunday have now arrived in Jordan at the funeral home there, Ballard Sunder Funeral Home in downtown Jordan. We saw the hearses pull up. We saw the just the massive processional that began in Minnetonka escorting those two hearses that you see right there in your screen to the funeral home, where this is the final destination, at least for today. There certainly will be more to come with service and memorial as loved ones and fellow officers and just any really person who feels so deeply about an incident, a tragedy like this, gathers in Jordan to say goodbye to these two officers.
And similar to Sunday, when the bodies were taken out of HCMC and taken to the medical examiner's office, they were brought out of the hospital, their bodies covered in an American flag. And today we can see from the back of the hearses that their bodies again will be covered with an American flag as they're taken into this funeral home. And as Karen said on the ground there, it just became very, very quiet in the city of Jordan as the procession started to make its way in, similar to the scene at the hospital. And now they're going to open up the hearses and bring the bodies out.
We are reaching the culmination of the processional that began in Minnetonka for 2 of the 3 fallen officers from Sunday's tragedy in Burnsville. Law enforcement, fire, you can see fire there, Lonsdale Fire Department, many fire departments in fact joined in this procession that spans almost 50 miles from Minnetonka down to Jordan. Family now gathering at the funeral home there. The 2 black hearses have arrived. Many officers and first responders now lining up outside that funeral home, exiting their vehicles that were part of that procession, and now will stand to honor the 2 as their bodies are taken from the hearse and presented into the funeral home.
These are the bodies of 27-year-old Matthew Ruge, a Burnsville police officer, and 27-year-old Burnsville police officer Paul Elmstrand. And as you can see there, family members gathering outside of the hearse, the 2 hearses, as those bodies will be lifted out and taken into the funeral home. What you can't see around them, though, is all of the law enforcement vehicles that have come as part of this procession who are now parking around them. And then there continues to be that procession coming into Jordan. This procession was probably 100+ vehicles long, and it made its way from Minnetonka, where the medical examiner's office is, to the city of Jordan, where this funeral home is. There is no information yet about memorial services, but that information will come in the coming days. Karen Scullin, one of our reporters, has been there in Jordan to talk about what the mood has been as the procession started to come into the city limits. And she said, while people were speaking beforehand, suddenly just a quiet came over everything and everybody there. And so, Karen, we're watching the aerial shot of this right now as family members and law enforcement line up and they prepare to bring the bodies out. Can you tell us just a little bit about what you've experienced this afternoon?
Well, as I said earlier, when the hearses arrived, it got very, very quiet. It is still quiet, except for the helicopters. You could almost hear a pin drop, and we're outside here in downtown Jordan. It's very emotional out here. A lot of people carrying flags, a lot of people wiping away tears. It's hard. It's really hard to watch this happen and unfold before our eyes here. The families of the fallen are here, waiting for the bodies to be taken out of the hearse. Of course, the Burnsville police officers are here, along with the fire department, all here to honor and pay their respects. But all up and down the sidewalks here in this little corner of downtown Jordan, people are just watching, waiting, no doubt recognizing the emotions they're feeling, as I am too. This is hard. It's just really, really hard.
It is, Karen, and I think you're feeling what many people in the state of Minnesota and certainly in the Twin Cities communities and most profoundly in Burnsville feeling since Sunday. It is difficult. It's difficult to see. It's difficult to watch. And there's nothing awkward about just listening and stopping. The silence is part of the process, and I guess it certainly is something that we can all take in. The images are powerful enough.
And we will stop here in moments because the silence is honestly what's appropriate. And we will just watch and we will listen.
Well, that is the culmination of presenting the bodies to the funeral home, the bodies of Paul Elmstrand, 27 years old, and Matthew Ruge, also 27, the two Burnsville police officers killed in the line of duty early Sunday morning, along with Adam Finseth, 40 years old, the Burnsville Firefighter-Paramedic, a procession that began, Kelsey, at about 2:30 this afternoon from Minnetonka in the ME's office.
Just let's keep this up for just one moment. Remember their faces. Matthew on the left, Paul in the middle, and Adam on the right. Matthew and Paul, the two that were brought to the funeral home today. Adam, the paramedic, was brought to the funeral home yesterday. You saw the faces of the family members, the loved ones, the law enforcement, the friends, and you saw how emotional this was and will continue to be for a long time to come. And again, we have no information about memorial services at this point. Those details will be released in the coming days, but it's a heavy, heavy time for the state of Minnesota and for law enforcement.
Yeah, we've heard from so many people, both Sunday, Monday, today, about this tragedy. This is just one component in laying these officers to rest, and it'll be a long time of healing for not just the Burnsville community, but certainly the entire state. We're going to follow this throughout the rest of the day as well. We'll certainly have more on Fox 9 and Fox Local. Our next opportunity to join you on Fox 9 will be at 5 o'clock, so a little over an hour from now, and we'll have much more detailed coverage of this as well as other stories of the day.